Hello everyone. So we will have the next talk about reproducible builds that will be presented now. So please give a warm applause to the presenters.
Oh, good afternoon. It's very nice to see so many people here today. Please come take a seat. Wave if we are too quiet or we're speaking too loudly, too quickly. So yeah. So my name's Chris Lamb. This is Vagrant Cascadian and Holger Levsen, and we're here to talk about the status of reproducible builds in Buster and aiming for bullseye and things like that. So,
can this light be tuned down a bit, please? Thank you. Sorry.
Cool. So we're going to go through. Yeah, we're going to go through things. Talk about what reproducible builds are, the sort of various status updates of our tools, distributions, and things like that. And then we're going to go delve further, deeper into the issues at hand, like the actual, bug numbers and things like that. Scary things like that. Okay, so starting with introduction. So what is reproducible builds? What problem are we actually solving here at the end of the day? So ignore the name for now. We'll come on back to the name reproducible. So the problem is, let's say the problem. Free software is great and open source software is great in that you can download and view the source code for any piece of software. So you can download the source code for Nginx or Apache and things like that. Unfortunately, most people are installing precompiled binaries. You are running apt install blah, or you're downloading, random binaries off Docker, this kind of thing, and you have basically no idea whether these things kind of correspond with each other. So, for example, the binary could say, "Oh, I'm Nginx version 12," but you have no idea that the binary you're downloading, the person hasn't accidentally, or his computer has not been hacked. Or perhaps they've deliberately put something in there just prior to compilation that's obviously not in the upstream repository or in the downloadable, but it's present in the binary that you're running on your own machine. And because this, you don't want to run code that you can't trust on your own machine and things like that. So this is the problem. You have source code and binaries, and you have no idea where they correspond in real life on your own, and this is obviously important everywhere. So enter reproducible builds. So the one way of solving this is to basically promise that identical build results are always generated from the same given source. So Nginx version 12 or whatever it is, I build it once on my machine and get things like that. And then sort of Vagrant builds it on his machine and Holger builds it on his machine. And if we get the same results, then either all of us have been compromised with the same third-party thing, or all trying to trick you, or none of us has. And if you just have a wide enough number of people, instead of just 3 people on stage that you shouldn't trust, I mean, look at us, look at our haircuts. If you have 300 people and they all have different interests and sort of diverse geographical backgrounds, different server types and things like that, then if everyone agrees that Nginx 12 should build like this, then therefore, this is probably the right one. This is probably the correct build, if you can put it that way. Cool, and so now we have a little video to demonstrate a bit more, and Holger's going to take over at this point.
Well, this is just the video showing. I let the video speak for itself first. Is sound on? I don't hear sound. I asked that to be tested. Good.
Ich bin Holger Levsen und seit 5 Jahren arbeite ich an Reproducible Builds, wo wir die Lieferkette für Softwareproduktion sicherer machen wollen. Das soll dazu dienen, dass man dann sicher sein kann, dass die Werkzeuge, die das bauen, dass da keine Hintertüren eingebaut sind, dass die alle dasselbe machen. Früher war es so, reproduzierbar oder reproduzierbare Programme heißt, ich baue ein Programm und kommt zweimal ein Programm raus, das dieselben Dinge tut. Bei uns heißt das aber Bit für Bit identisch, also ich baue zweimal ein Programm und das Ergebnis hat zweimal denselben Bithaufen. Das sieht 100% identisch aus.
Wir haben hier zwei Pizzen, die sind von Maschinen gemacht, aber sie sind unterschiedlich, weil die Zutaten, Lebensmittel sind einfach organisch, sind unterschiedlich. Während hier zwei Lego-Beutel und da lässt sich jetzt einfach zweimal 100% dasselbe rausbauen. Dieses Lego ist nicht ganz identisch. Der Beweis ist erbracht, ich bin keine Maschine.
This was a summary for the Prototype Fund project, which funded me from last autumn. And they made this video. It took us 6 hours to shoot it, and that's 90 seconds. It's on YouTube. So what's new since DebConf 18 in Taipei? We have a logo now, which we didn't have last year, which I'm very happy about it. We have T-shirts made out of and stickers also, but badges which will arrive later, so you can pick them up probably at front desk. We had the 4th Reproducible Builds Summit in Paris with 50 people, I think, something like that, from 25 different projects attending, hosted at the Mozilla office. We are now a Software Freedom Conservancy project since July last year. Was in Taipei in the making. And there was a lot of work on other projects as well. Arch Linux is now at 80% reproducible in their testing. OpenSUSE at 93%, though they also, with a configuration change to RPM, which is not in their real packages, so it's also in theory just. And OpenSUSE and Arch Linux are now included in our database for test reproducible builds.org. So soon we can make web pages where we see how Firefox in Debian compared to Firefox in Arch Linux and so on. And there's more been happening. Since the mini DebConf in Hamburg, there's Alpine Linux being tested. In Hamburg there were one person from Alpine, one person from Arch Linux. It's really nice. And NetBSD and FreeBSD, their base system is 100% reproducible, but we haven't looked into their packages or ports, as they call them. And Tails produces now 100% reproducible ISO images, which is pretty great. And OpenWRT and Core Boot images are also mostly reproducible. Some targets are not, but yes. And collaboration in general is great. There's lots of expected and unexpected results. And one result is this display, which is here, which was a present from Jelle from Arch Linux. Pretty nice. And it's on GitHub, and there's an ESP32, and you can make it yourself and redo it reproducibly. Debian Installer images is...
Yeah, I'll just jump in here. So in the past year, we've done a lot of work trying to get the Debian installer images reproducible as well, because it's obviously a starting point for installing Debian. As I say, lots of progress this year. This required a bunch of changes to some of the tools that the Debian installer uses as part of their build process. For example, mtools manipulates fat partitions, that kind of thing. That was creating non-deterministic various entries in the file systems and the file names that were being produced and things like that. So that needed to be made non-random, deterministic, so every time you built it, you got the same result. Actual changes to the Debian installer itself, sometimes just to call the right commands with the right arguments and things like that, but also some larger changes as well to make sure it's generating things in the right order, or package manifest files that get included in the ISO are not in a random or just a file system based ordering. It's currently, it works on my machine, it's reproducible when I build it on my machine, but that's not enough. We want to get sort of centralized testing, and that's currently just blocking on one bug. But that's fine. There's no real rush to merge that, really. But it'll be great. We just want to particularly have a shout out to the DI team, saying thanks for taking all these patches so quickly and giving them such a thorough review. So yeah, thank you very much. Things like that. Also going to talk about some of the tools inside that we use in reproducible builds. So we have a number of non-Debian specific tools. Our first one is Diffscope, which is just like your regular diff on the command line. You know, when you do diff and then 2 files and it gives you a difference between them. But if you do that on a binary file, or if you do that on 2 deb files, which are, R archives with, perhaps a tarball that's compressed with something like that, it quickly becomes entirely meaningless if you just run a diff on a binary. I'm sure you've all tried it. So many years ago we wrote Diffscope, which basically identifies that, oh, it's two deb files, we can unpack them in this way, and then inside that it contains something else, and inside that contains something else, and inside that there's a directory tree, and inside that, all the way down, entirely recursive. And then it runs the actual original diff kind of thing on it, and also modifies anything that it might be able to transform from a binary format, like a PDF, into text. And so very quickly you can go from a huge binary.deb all the way down to, oh, it's just differing in this particular line, things like that. So here's, for example, a HTML output. This is of a Debian package, and so already many, 5 or 6 levels deep that you'd have to manually unpack and do all yourself, but Diffscope just magically does it. And it's just saying that in this file, eventually there's a file called install.rdf, and in there, one of them says 5.06, and over here it says 5.0.7. And usually you can use that, do a bit of grepping, a bit of, use your common sense on the original source, and be like, oh yeah, this is the line we need to fix to get this working. So yeah, lots of changes this year. These are the bugs that I fixed that are on the BTS, and there's probably more on Salsa and other, loads of changes we just didn't file bugs against ourselves because we were just going to fix them in the next 5 minutes. So Diffscope's been changed massively, progressed a lot faster and things like that in the past year. The other tool is slightly Debian specific, which is strict nondeterminism. I'm sure you might have seen that when you're building your package, DH strict nondeterminism. So this is a bit of a hacky tool that we are using to remove specific non-deterministic behavior in, for example, tool chains. So it's a bit difficult to, one example might be Java. We haven't managed to prioritize, there aren't enough spoons in the day, I put it that way, to fix all the issues in the Java JDK yet, just need to find time. And so we just have this sort of rather hacky post-processing step that we hope goes away in the future. But in the meantime, it's very useful to get reproducible results inside Debian. And that's also seen a large number of changes and things like that. Cool. The other changes we've been actioning are around communication community, particularly around our website. For example, we moved from a weekly to monthly report structure, and this means that we can more accurately and sort of better capture what we're up to every month and things like that. Weekly was a little bit too much. And so our weekly reports, I think we've done 2 or 3 of them, maybe 3, 4 now. 3. Cool. And it seems to be working well, and it's just a great summary every month, and they appear on the Planet, which I'm sure you've seen us spam every so often. We have a new design on the site. It looks better, but also it's much easier to find the information. You can easily drill down into documentation. We have better links and things like that. So we're paying a lot more attention in the past year about just communicating and documenting better. Also moving non-Debian specific stuff from the Debian wiki onto our cross-distribution website. And again, that centralizes things and makes it actually easier for people to find and then update the information. So we're finding despite it not being a wiki per se, it's being updated a bit better, and it's just a bit more up to date and things like that. And we also have better instructions how to contribute. We have a really nice sort of 4 or 5 step how to sign up to Salsa, because that's where we're storing all our Git repos, which everyone's welcome to steal. Lots of screenshots, how to, exactly how to first register for Salsa and then request access to the salsa group that we have and things like that. So feel free to steal that. Great. And now I'm passing back to one of you. Thanks.
Okay. Buster, as you have probably all know, now has the policy packages should be reproducible, which wasn't the case last year in Taipei.
Close.
I think it's pretty new still. And our graph of unapplied patches is still the same. I think it's now, we only have 400 patches which have not been applied. So now would be the time to do that. If somebody wants to help us and NMU 400 packages, that would be great. There's always NMU time. What else? Some more issues in detail. What else is missing? And that's I think speak.
Hello? Is it working? All right, hello. Build path variations are still essentially missing from our reproducible promise that we're giving for Buster and currently for the upcoming bullseye. And one of the things that we actually did get in upstream, though upstream GCC 8 has a macro prefix map, and also the file prefix map, which basically transforms the file macro into a relative path. So if it embeds the file macro with the full path, obviously if you build it in a different directory, you're going to get an unreproducible binary. And last year during DebConf, I wrote up a quick patch, and then Guillaume Chauvert actually wrote a better patch, which obviously is the one that got applied to dpackage in order to enable this feature. So it's in GCC 8, but it's not enabled by default in dpackage build flags. You have to expressly turn on this feature. And there are some reasons for this. Some build systems still embed the GCC command line. So even though you're saying remap all of these file paths into it, the file paths get into it in a different place, thus kind of sabotaging the reproducibility we were so hoping for. Some test suites rely on the full paths. I think notably some of the things in the Qt toolchain. So we can't just enable that archive-wide without potentially breaking a number of things, though we have enabled it on our test infrastructure. So we have a rough idea of how many things it actually does break. And it also only works with GCC. It needs to be fixed in other tools like LLVM or any number of other compilers or other tool chains. And the simple workaround, which we've been doing for the entirety of the Buster release cycle and will continue to do, is on testing and stable, we don't vary the build path. We rebuild in the same path. And that information's recorded in the build info file so we can get it. So essentially, at least at the moment, we're looking at ignoring these for bullseye. The future, Shimon wrote up a specification for build path prefix map, and the idea was to embed the kinds of thing that we were putting in debug prefix map and would put in macro prefix map into an environment variable that then would not get embedded in the binary and would solve thousands of packages rather than just a few hundred. But GCC maintainers didn't like embedding the results of a variable into the way GCC works, which is kind of understandable. But we have some ideas about how to move forward on that. Documented them at the GCC build path wiki page on wiki.debian.org. And we would really love anybody who's interested in working on GCC or possibly other compilers to take a look at some of this stuff and join our project and fix some of these long-standing issues. So,
we probably. Am I on? Hello? Am I on? Come on. Can you? Am I on? Yes. Okay. We'll probably move this page from our Debian wiki to our normal website because it's a general upstream problem. I don't find it. So, yes, better. So this will be moved, but we wanted to start quickly because we talk about this issue and it's very complicated, complex, and then we forgot the details, so now we have one place for the future to collect where it will be. So yeah, Debian is wrong, or also OpenSUSE is wrong. This 93% is a lie because it's just theoretically reproducible and we lack the infrastructures part, which we show now. And this is also not to finger point at the teams, like there's a lot of FTP master stuff and app maintainers, but we rather want to point out the problems there are. So the difference between theory and practice is that 93 in theory, but then I investigated by comparing build info files which exist twice. So there has been a rebuild of this build info file and we only got to 54% in March 2018. And when looking at this today, it's only 31% reproducible packages in Buster. So, and we don't know, we can still improve on this by doing rebuilds, but we'll not get to 93%, that's also clear. That's later. Oh, yes, there we didn't. And then there's the problem of these 6,800 packages which have been uploaded before December 2016, and that means there's no build info files for them. And out of these 6,800 packages, probably half of them are Arch-any, so we can schedule bin and amuse, and I've had some discussion with some members of the release team how to make this happen. But there's probably 3,000 Arch-all packages which need which need sourceful uploads. And well, I think we should do that, and maybe I'll try to do it scripted or whatever and upload 50 packages per day in amuse really. We'll see, to be able to get really to this 100%, because else we cannot get over 93 minus 54, so we can only get to 69% at the moment. That's the maximum Buster would be. And Bullseye as well, because Bullseye has the same packages. Besides that, we still have this old problem that there's source uploading, including an AMD64 build info file, which cause problems. There's a workaround, a hackish workaround for that, but we like to have a better fix. Then bin and amuse can cause problems. There has been some discussion here at DebConf where I need to update the bug. And this mass rebuild of packages was the problem on the previous slide. And then we have these build info files which are only on an FTP Debian org machine, but or FTP master, and they are not available they're only available to Debian developers, but not to the general public. So there's this other bug to include them into the archive maybe. And then there's the whole other problem of build info files for security packages. They only get synced on every point release at the moment, and we need to get better there as well. And then we have build info files on build info Debian.net, which is the service Chris wrote. And then I wrote build infos Debian.net because things are not complicated enough. No. These two services have different properties, and one important distinction is that build info Debian net allows submissions from everyone. So there is both the Debian build info files that are there, as well as the rebuilds from Reproducible Builds, as from other rebuilders. And when you ask for a build info file, you get many build info files. And then you need to look whether it's signed with which GPG key to find out from who it is. And the GPG keys change, and Debian builders have many GPG keys, and it's all complicated. And so I wrote this build info Debian net, which just exposes what's on FTP master. So you can download this via Apache with a web server. And that's build date structure. So every day there's a new directory where the builds from the day are in. But if you want to find something, you need to know when it's built. So I've created a script which creates a pool structure, so you can now go to whatever PU parts and find the PU parts build info files there. But it's still an unofficial service, and I think there should be a Debian org machine serving these files. And we need to sort out these names and which services and how to do this. And Bremner also started to write another implementation or something. So build info files are still a field of work. And in total, we have about 1 million build info files, out of which 100,000 are for AMD 64, so it's roughly 100,000 per architecture since December 2016. So there's some obsolete, of course. And it's 12 gigabyte files, and the links take 4 gigabytes, so it's not much storage requirement. Another thing we want eventually is opt to warn when a package is not reproducible, or also to block this. That would be great for bullseye, but the goal should really not to install unreproducible software. And this is something I will need longer than bullseye probably. And then there's InTotal, which brings us to the next level. InTotal is a project by NYU, New York University, where you can say, I want the packages to be rebuilt by these entities, and there needs to be these signatures. But I think InTotal is good, but it will be way more work to integrate it in Debian as well. For test reproducible builds, we have these common database, was already explained, and we have JSON now for several projects which one can query, but these are only these QA results and not real rebuilders. And we still plan to have shared nodes and cross-distro links. And there's the thing, there's two kinds of tests, and at the moment we only do the CI test, we don't do the rebuilds. So this is a bit depressing, but the good thing is bullseye is not sorted out yet, so we can still fix things for bullseye. And right like the wind bullseye was the Toy Story reference, I like bullseye with this, which is from Hans-Christoph Steiner. He used this in a 2016 talk about reproducible builds, which are actually bullseyes. We have no Debian infrastructure for properly rebuilding packages. We just build the packages, and the reproducible builds machines, they are builders, they are not rebuilders. We don't use the build info file, we use build and stretch, buster and stuff, but we don't build in the same SID environment the build Ds are building. New York University has done a proof of concept for doing this. And we would like to integrate something like this with Debian's official build D network. So it's done on Debian machines and properly rebuilt for all architectures also. Of course, reproducible builds only has 4 architectures. So that's something I'd like to discuss here or elsewhere in future. And we are very happy that the release team now blocks testing migration for binary uploads. I know there's still some minor or annoyances about it, but we really like it. And we very much like the idea of accelerating migration for reproducible build packages, or adding a delay for unreproducible packages. What do you think about this? Has some support. Who really hates it or dislikes it can also send anonymous email or something. It's just a plan, and we need to sort this out, because at the moment, without a package test, the migration delay is already down to 2 or 3 days. So further lowering, it's not possible, so it needs to become longer, and we need to sort this out. There was a mail just this morning about this. And maybe it's too early for policy change that packages must be reproducible, but maybe we can have a policy change that packages must not regress. We're almost done, then there's Q&A part. We would really like to hear your feedback about this. Please come to me and tell me, Holger, this is a shitty idea, or this is a great idea, or talk to Chris or Vagrant. Or send mail to Debian Devil, or whatever. So yes, thank you for being here and for all your contributions. And that's it from our side. Now we have time for questions.
Hello. So, anybody have any question? Go to the microphone for the questions. Who has the question? I don't see the hand.
How much more time do we have left?
For reproducible builds, would you ever consider putting like the signature of that build ID or the signature of the build into the package manager itself, so you could have a package that lived in one place and moved to another, like a different build prefix, and then you could represent that unique ID in apt or in dpackage, if that makes sense. Like say like I rebuilt it here, and this is the signature of it when it lived in one place and then moved to another. If it changed from like running in one place to another.
Oh, so the build parts are about the build time. So it's about where on your file system the package was actually built.
Yeah. For example, if you change the build prefix, could you how do you serve this data to the rest of?
Well, you don't need to serve it beyond that. The end user system doesn't have to care about that. So, for example, when you mention apt, you're not then it's all about the rebuilding process, not about the actual installation time process, if you see what I mean. Mm-hmm. So by the time it hits apt, the package should already be reproducible or not. It should be completely reproducible. You should get the same result, regardless of which direction you're building it in.
Could that result be put into the package itself, like as package metadata?
No. The problem with putting the metadata in there is some of that metadata is in and of itself not reproducible, and we want to keep the verification a simple checksum so that you can do bit for bit identical. So we have a build info file which distributes that type of information in an external way. But then you can actually just do a checksum, and the actual .deb or .rpm or whatever artifact you're trying to verify.
Okay, thank you.
It can mean that the build path is embedded in 100 or 1,000 places, so the diff will become too large. But one one thing about this adding a delay for packages which are unreproducible. In my opinion, we are not there yet, or there's too many important packages which are unreproducible now, so I would do it rather with regressions in the beginning. If there's a regression, then delay the migration, but because we have in build essential depends is 200 unreproducible packages, and they include GCC 8, Perl, and apt. So there's still a lot of source code fixes to be done, but for the packages which are reproducible now, if they become unreproducible, maybe it would be a good idea to not let them into testing then, because they were reproducible once. What broke? What the fuck? Don't do that. But we need to sort this out. We have 7 more minutes for questions.
Well, one problem at least I would have with that regression idea is that I have a package which is quite complicated and is quite old, and that's why it was not reproducible in the beginning. And I made it somehow reproducible, and then I discovered that they actually have a file included which is not sourced by itself, but has to be built by other files from that system. So I tried to build it again, but that made my process not reproducible, and I'm currently unable to fix that. And I think, well, there I have to wait what to do, and I think building it from source has a higher level than building it reproducibly, and that's why I would dislike the idea of automatically not letting it migrate then.
Hello? Great. I think that might be a separate issue that can be resolved in that you're worried that, as I understand it, you're worried that if you build it and upstream builds it, because you are rebuilding source correctly and properly, you would get a different result to what if upstream built it, where they are not rebuilding everything. Is that a fair summary?
Not really. Well, the problem with exactly that package is that it's upstream orphaned, but it's important in our field. So I'm actually maintaining what's left over upstream.
I think those are separate and orthogonal issues, as long as it's reproducible within Debian. In other words, if you, in the Debian package, if you built, or any of I built it, and we get the same result, it doesn't really matter what shenanigans get up to in your Debian rules.
But it doesn't. That's the problem, though.
Oh, okay, well, they might depend on the specifics there. But it's not, it's not intrinsic to deviating from upstream. That should probably just be an issue with a particular tool or a particular tool chain.
In principle, both have would have the problem, but upstream usually distributed that file because it never changed in the last 20 years.
I understand, yeah. And you were right to you shouldn't revert that, right? You should be building the source, right? Yeah. So that you made the right decision here, but yeah. Yeah, we understand, yeah. Great, if there are no further questions, we'd like to thank you for coming and all the contributors that aren't here. I do have some Reproducible Builds badges, so if you all huddle around the front, you can all grab some for your bags, etc., and things like that. So yeah, thank you again.